and welcome to All Business Media TV. I'm your host, Rick Delgado, and our guest today is Katherine Myers. She is the owner at the Resiliency Counselor. You can reach out to her online at her website, resilienccounselor.com, or call her directly at 937-405-5795. And again, Katherine, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. And again, we appreciate you taking the time and joining us here in studio. Now, for people that may not have seen you or heard of you before, just give us a quick little background of exactly what you do as a resiliency counselor.
I started Resiliency Counselor as an offshoot of what I've done with my work at Wright State University. I'm the Assistive Technology Specialist, but I work with students with disabilities and in all kinds of capacities as a case manager, and I do their technology support, but I've worked with their families as well. But I've also do this because of experience I've gained from my son, who's quadriplegic and is not able to speak. Experience I've gained from my husband and illnesses that he's had,
right,
and also my own disability and problems that I've experienced physically as well.
Right. And that has kind of led you to, you know, you spent a lot of time of your career at Wright State University helping kids and people there, correct?
Yes, I have.
And that has kind of led you down this road of now getting ready for, you know, the next portion, so to speak.
Yes, I am. I'm looking towards retirement, and I've actually even told my boss that I'm considering retiring in a year.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I've actually spoken the words. I'm getting ready to retire. So, yes, I'm looking towards that.
That's interesting because I think that's part of that's going to be somewhat a part of our discussion today, right?
Yes, it is. We're talking about goal setting and positive thinking today.
Right.
And you're right. Goal setting is very important, and you know, we look at positive thinking and goal setting, and they really go very much together, because you can think positively all you want to, but if you don't have goals to back it up,
right,
you're not going to go anywhere. Positive thinking is extremely important, especially when you're dealing with all kinds of trials in your life. Thinking positively was something very important for my husband and I, as we were experiencing a lot of trials with our son. And sometimes it was really hard to think positively about anything.
Right.
And actually we watched a minister that was actually, his mantra was power of positive thinking. But you have to have something to go with it. And that is being able to set goals.
Right.
And the two of them actually go very much together. And there were times in our lives when we weren't able to set goals. We were afraid to, because things were going so hard for us that setting goals was something we're like, how in the world can we even do that? We were going from one crisis to another, and people would say, well, you know, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we're like, no, it's not. It's a freight train coming after us. And that freight train really was coming after us because it was another crisis, and another crisis, and another crisis. And we didn't feel like we could set a goal, because every time we did, there was another crisis. And those goals that we would try to set were so far-reaching that we were like, why bother setting a goal? And so we felt like, well, there's no way we're ever going to be successful at anything, because we just can't possibly get there, because there's always a crisis.
Right.
And then we finally got to the point where, like, we're okay, we've got to set some kind of goal. And I set one as I was dealing with my health problems, and that was to graduate from college. And I was actually doing rehab for my physical problems. My son was in foster care at the time, because I could not care for him. My health had deteriorated so badly from caring for him. It was a combination of caring for him and stuffing everything that I felt and all the problems we were going through, that I stuffed everything, and my body just physically completely broke down totally and completely.
Right.
And I was in a wheelchair for 2 or 3 times during this period, and my rehab was going back to school. Well, my husband was kind of like, well, when you get to a point you can go back to work, and I said, no, I need to graduate.
Right.
And he was like, okay. So my actual goal was to graduate by the time I was 40 and have a job. So I set 2 goals. And he was like, okay, you know how dangerous goal setting is in our lives. And it was true. Goal setting in our lives was extremely, extremely hard to do.
Right.
And I even had a doctor who told me I would never be able to take more than 1 class at a time. which I'm the kind of person, don't ever tell me I can never do something. That's really dangerous for me because I'm going to prove everybody wrong.
Right.
That's just who I am. God made me that way. And I get my back up and I'm like, excuse me, I don't think so. So my last 2 years, I actually went full time. So I had a grant if I was going full time. And the last year, well, actually both years, I took about 17, 18 credit hours, which was quite a bit per quarter. And the first time I did it, my husband said, promise me you'll never do that again. And I said, okay, I promise. And I didn't do it the next 2 quarters, but my last year I did 18, 17, and 19 credit hours.
Right.
He was furious with me until I explained to him, I'm doing my practicum, an independent study, and he was like, and my practicum. And I said, and that's a good portion of my credit hours. And he was like, okay. I said, it's actual class time is not that bad. And an independent study at the same time. And he was like, okay. So I'm like, phew, got him off my back. But I was able to do that. And I thought, that's one doctor who was wrong.
Right.
But I actually succeeded at that goal of graduating, and I graduated before my 40th birthday, and on my 40th birthday, I was offered my job at Wright State, which was fantastic. And actually, since Rob was in the hospital at the time, he'd had major back surgery and ended up being in there for 6 weeks instead of just 2 weeks like we thought. My person who was my boss, going to be my boss, said, when can you start? And I said, oh, Monday. This was on Friday. It was my birthday. And I said, oh, Monday. And I went ahead and started with Rob still in the hospital. And we had another 4 weeks to go with him in the hospital. And I started working with him in the hospital.
Right.
And I was like, that was kind of crazy. I could have said I can start in another week or 2. But I was afraid to not go ahead and start because I didn't want them to say, well, then we'll let somebody else have the job.
Right.
Even though I had competed for it, I even helped write the job description for it because I was in a temporary position with them at the time. So it was, finally a goal worked out for us.
Right.
And things actually started turning around with me going back to work at that time.
Right. Now, what about, okay, so you had that goal. You had those 2 goals of graduating college and getting that job, right, by the time you were 40. What kind of positive thinking, did you do exercises? Did you read books? I mean, that's a tough thing to do because, like you said, you're in the midst of also trying to recover from your illnesses and dealing with the other peripheral stuff that's going on in your life. How did you keep that positive frame of mind going? Because that's difficult to do, considering what you're facing, all those freight trains coming at you.
Well, I spent a lot of time telling myself that I could do it. Plus, I was majoring in something that I knew was what I needed to do. I was majoring in Rehabilitation Education, which was to train people in using the kind of technology that my son used,
Right.
and other assistive technology. And by doing that, that gave me the motivation that I needed to keep on going because I also knew that's what God wanted me to do.
Right.
But internally, I kept telling myself, whenever I would start to get frustrated, I was like, okay, wait a minute. This is what you want. This is what I need to do, and I have to keep going, and I know I can do this.
Right.
And I just gave myself a lot of positive self-talk. Positive self-talk is really, really important when you're trying to attain something and it feels like it's very far-reaching. And when I started out with it, it felt like it was way down the road. But as I took one class after another and I saw students who really didn't like me being in their class because I was that student that everybody hated, because I was at home, and especially when I was only taking one class at a time, and I had plenty of time to study and work on projects and things. And I would do my project and I would turn it in first and get an A on it and set the curve. People did not like me very well in my classes.
Right.
And I remember the senior project that I did, and I went into it really confident because in a senior seminar class like I was taking, you're covering things that are not covered in your program. And this gave me all the confidence in the world. It really did. It helped me really set the confidence that I needed for graduation and for going to work. And I had all the positive thinking going on with it. since I could do it on something that was not covered in the program, I did it on communication devices like my son used.
Right.
Contacted the company that made my son's device. They sent me some devices to demonstrate. I was the second person to do my presentation, and I wrote my paper on this kind of stuff too. So I was the second one to go up. I had these devices to demonstrate. I talked about them, and I talked about the benefits of communication, the do's and don'ts about it. And as I was going back to take my seat, I heard some voices in the class going, well, how do you follow that? And I was like, yes. And I got the highest grade in the class on it.
Right.
So I was the kind of student people did not like to have in their class. For that very reason, because I worked hard, I loved education,
Right.
and I loved being in school. I really enjoyed that. I inherited that from my father. And it gave me something to do. I wasn't just sitting at home anymore, and I wasn't just going to medical appointments. I wasn't just going to therapy anymore. I was actually doing something productive, and that was going to help me be productive.
Right.
And that helped me to be more positive about things too. It wasn't just me thinking positively, it helped me to see that there was going to be something positive come out of this too.
Right.
And that helped too. One thing that I've seen in everything that I've done, if you can see that there's going to be a positive outcome, it really helps you to think positively about it.
Right.
Some people are not like that though, that can see positive things coming out. My husband's was not. He and I were very, very, very opposite. I've always been more of a positive thinker. He said he was a realist. He was not. He was very pessimistic.
Right.
And he was the glass half empty. I was the glass half full
Right.
person, and all. But you know, having those goals and being able to set them and shoot for something really made a big difference in my recovery, and it really helped me get there.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of that, it kind of reminds me. I think it was Henry Ford that said this: that whether you can or you can't, you're right. Basically, it's that mindset that you're talking about. You got to have that positive. If you want to achieve something, you got to, kind of talk to yourself, like you said, self-talk. But you also, as you mentioned, you have to have a goal in mind. Because if you don't have a goal, then what's all this? Yeah, I'm great. But what are you great at?
That's very
What do you want to
true.
achieve? Where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself? 6 months, 8 months, 12 months down the road. Setting those goals. Is a very important aspect in terms of achieving really anything.
That's absolutely true. You have to be able to see and just define what it is you want to do,
Right.
where you're headed. We have to have direction. If you don't have some kind of direction, you're not going to go anywhere. You can have all the positive thinking in the world, but if you don't have a direction to head, what are you doing?
Right.
Okay. You can be searching for a job, okay? Or you can be thinking, well, I need a job, okay? But if you're sitting there and just going, well, I'm positive I'm going to get a job, but you're not doing anything about it,
Right.
you're not going to get a job, okay? You have to physically do something. Positive thinking is great to have, and you need it, okay? It's something that's very important. Because negative thinking, there's a thing called self-fulfilling prophecy,
Right.
okay? Like you said, and I believe you're right, it was Henry Ford, I think, that said that. Whether you can or you can't, you're right.
You're right. Yeah.
If you say you can't, you won't. If you're constantly thinking negatively about something, you're not going to be very successful either. But you can think positively all the time, but if you don't have any action to go with it, you're not going to get anywhere.
Right.
Okay? You have to have action. Positive thinking requires action of some kind. Okay? So you have to be able to get up, okay? You have to be persistent and get up and do things to actually go anywhere
Right.
with that positive thinking. And it helps when you're going to get up and do something to set goals for yourself. Some of those goals can be very small, okay, to help you get started.
Right.
Because if you've been beat down a lot and you're like, okay, I know I'm going to get to do this. I'm going to take a whole new direction with my life. I'm tired of being beat up. I'm actually going to go out. I'm going to change directions. I'm going to change careers, okay? But to get there, I have to define what I'm going to do. That's a start if you're going to change careers.
Well, yeah.
You've got to define what you're going to do and what it's going to take to get there,
Right.
okay? And then you have to figure out, okay, if it's going to take this to get there, let's find the baby steps along the way. And you just start ticking off each little step that you take. And as you tick off each little step you take, you're getting very closer and closer to that end goal.
Right.
Okay. We can't just automatically say, this is where I'm going to go, without realizing what's in between.
Right.
Okay. We have to define those pieces in between. Okay. When I shot for getting my bachelor's degree, I had to define what all I was going to have to do in between to get there. Okay. And when I decided my major, I had to just define what differences I was going to go for when I changed my major. What was going to be different about it, and why did I want to change it?
Right.
And all. So you have to make sure you know exactly what you're going to have to do to get there, so that when those bumps in a road happen, because they're going to, okay? Bumps in the road are a reality, okay? They're part of life, okay? So that when those bumps in the road happen, okay, there's a bump, okay, I've got to get right back up so I can keep on going, because here's my next goal.
Right.
I got to achieve this one so that I can go on to the next one, so that we don't stop moving in the right direction.
Right.
Because if we don't have those things defined, when that bump hits, okay, I hit a bump. Well, that takes care of everything. I'm
Right.
not going to go anywhere.
Exactly.
I'm not going to reach that goal. And there goes the goal.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's what happens to a lot of people. Okay, they might set a goal, but they don't go anywhere with it because they hit that first bump or that second bump, and they've not defined enough. They've not recognized everything in between that are the little goals to get there enough to feel like they're achieving it, and it's all out the window.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of, it's almost like, you know, you can set, it's almost like you should set the goal and then kind of work backwards too.
Absolutely.
To say, okay, you know what, what do I need to get to that point? And you can work backwards as well. And it's almost like when somebody says, oh, well, that person's an overnight, success or an overnight sensation. But they don't look back and see, you know, of the 5, 10, 15, 20 years of work that went into, then all of a sudden, boom, something happens where you notice them for the first time and think it's an overnight success, but they've been busting their hump for, 15, 20 years to get there.
Well, an example, Edison with the light bulb. How many mistakes did he have before he actually had the light bulb?
Yeah.
I don't know how many it was, but it was countless.
It was about 1,000, I believe.
I think so too. But we forget about all the ones that were wrong, and we focus in on the one success that he did have.
Right.
Okay. We focused in on that one that was right, and we tend to forget about everything else because this was his success. This was the one that worked.
Right.
Okay. And that's what people tend to do. Once we have that great success in life, that's where everybody focuses, and they forget about all the work that went into getting there.
Right.
Okay, we forget about all of that, okay? But all that work that goes into getting there is extremely important. And you're right, we go backwards. We set that goal, and we have to work backwards.
Right.
To figure out what are we going to do to get there. But you're right, we forget about those 20 years, and when we have something that's not a success, we have to have the wherewithal with that positive thinking that, hey, wait a minute, I'm not stopping here.
Right.
I'm going to keep going because I know I'm onto something.
Right. And I think that's the way he kind of portrayed it when he was asked. It's like, well, you failed 1,000 times. Why didn't you quit? And he's like, well, I just found 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Right. Right.
It was that kind of thinking that got him to his goal.
That's exactly right. And that's a prime example of why we have to keep going.
Right.
Okay? Just because we don't succeed the first time doesn't mean we quit. Okay? We have to have that ability to think positively and persist and keep going so that we don't stop. Okay? And that's what's so important in life. We can't just go, okay, I've had a rough road, I just have to lay over and quit.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. We have to get up. We have to keep moving. We have to develop those actions to keep on going. My father was working on his PhD in aeronautical engineering. And he worked on his dissertation, his research for it. And I have no clue what in the world it was. It was too complicated a name for me to even pronounce.
But every time he would put it through the computer one more time. And that one more time would kick it out and prove him wrong every single time. And he finally stopped for a while. And my mother asked him at one point, she said, "Can't you write about what didn't work?" And he said, "Unfortunately, that's not the way it works." Well, finally, when he retired from the Air Force, Lockheed picked it back up with him. He was working for them as chief scientist and said, "We want you to finish." And he said, "Okay, that's fine," because they were very interested in his research. And he finally was able to finish it because of their interest in it. And he got his PhD finally when he was about pretty close to 60 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we convinced him that he needed to actually walk for his degree and not just have it mailed to him. Because we said, you need to show everybody that it doesn't matter how old you are when you achieve your goals.
Right.
And let them see that anybody can still reach the goals that they have set.
Yeah.
So he did. He went back to Purdue and got it.
That's great.
And which was great. We were really proud of him, and we were really proud that he went and walked and showed everybody that it doesn't make any difference. You keep going, and all. But yeah, he couldn't write about the lack of success that he had. It had to be the success. But it took, I don't know how many times he tried and kept putting it through, and it did not work.
Right.
Until he finally got it right.
Now, with goal setting itself, and you've probably done this with students at Wright State, correct? Where you know, especially if they're just getting started and it's the new equipment and they're trying to figure everything out, is that something where, you know, setting those goals makes it possible to kind of not only see it through, but, you know, kind of follow it up and show them the path and be like, look, if you continue down this road, I'm telling you, we're gonna see something. It's gonna happen, because eventually something has to happen, right?
Right. And we usually start with small goals.
Okay.
We start with very small goals, especially with a struggling student. We'll start with small ones, and as we see small success, we make sure we point that out to the student.
Right.
And then we make the goals bigger. And bigger chunked goals, that it takes more effort on their part, and make sure that they actually take notice of those bigger goals that they've reached. And it's not always grade related. It can be very action related, and it can be a matter of, okay, to relieve your stress, I want you in the fitness center this many times during the week.
Right.
Or I want you working out with your buddies this many times during the week. Or doing fencing this many times during the week, and in order to relieve your stress enough so that you can be in the help room this many times a week too, to get the help that you need. And setting goals like that to help lead to the academic success that they need, and working with them on that kind of thing. And yes, we do that quite a bit. All
right. Well, that's great to know. And again, you know, we're talking with our guest, Katherine Myers. She's the Resiliency Counselor you can find online. Her website, resiliencycounselor.com, or give her a call directly at 937-405-5795. Now, Katherine, I know you mentioned earlier as well that, you know, your faith comes into play when you're talking about, you know, positive talk, because the Bible is full of positive talk. Believe me, I listen to Joel Osteen. He's very positive.
Yes, he is.
And it's one of those things where it's almost, you almost forget what you're listening to, because the message is just being portrayed in a positive side, you know, in a positive light, as opposed to one of, you know, it's religion based. It's more of, you know, carrying that positive feeling and that positive mental attitude throughout, you know, whatever you're doing in life, right?
Right. Very definitely. My faith has really played a big part in it. And like I said, there was one minister in particular that we listened to quite a bit. Was Robert Schuller on the Hour of Power. He's now deceased, and his grandson has the ministry. But he was very much the power of positive thinking. And, you know, positive thinking is incredibly important.
Right.
And that positive input, and you're right, the Bible is full of it, especially in the New Testament. You see it all over the place once Christ arrives on the scene. You see that's why he was here. And positivity is really what we're after. And being able to see, you know, positive treatment of people, viewing things in a positive light.
Right.
Looking at things and seeing all the positive things around us, that's important. And when you're trying to think of things and view your life in a positive manner, you have to look beyond just your own little shell, okay? You have to look at things around you and not just listen to the news, because you're not going to find it there.
Right.
You have to look at things in your neighborhood. Look at what children are doing to help other people. Look at the things that kids in the high schools are doing to help other people, because they do fundraising. Even small children do things to help others by doing fundraising for other people. They do special clothing drives. They do, I know in our area, you constantly see kids doing things to help other kids. You see the light on other young people where they are doing food drives for their neighbors.
Right.
So there's always good things going on. And when you're thinking and you're down in the dumps and you're thinking, well, there's nothing going around, how can I be positive? You look for things. Go to a soup kitchen and see who's helping. Sometimes there are young people there.
Right.
And, or go and volunteer somewhere. And you'll find out that, gee, somebody has it a lot worse than I do. So I should feel good about what's going on in my life, even though I have problems.
Right.
Somebody else has it a lot worse than I do. Okay, so volunteering is a great way to feel more positive about yourself, because you're helping somebody else who's not quite as fortunate as you are.
Right.
And that can really turn yourself around and looking at things in a better light. And that's something that really is taught in the Bible, is looking at others and helping other people.
Right.
And when we do that, we feel so much better about ourselves, not just because, oh gee, somebody is worse than I am, but simply because we've helped someone. And that's something that we're supposed to be doing, is helping other people.
Right.
And when we help others, we always feel better about ourselves, and then somebody else is going to help someone else. And it's also something that we call paying it forward.
Right.
Now, instead of paying it back, we're paying forward and helping others that way. It's a great movement for people to help others, and it's a great way to feel more positive about the whole world around you. When you feel more positive about the world around you, then you're more apt to take action, and positive action for yourself.
Right.
As well.
Yeah, because a lot of times, let's face it, we get caught up in our own stuff.
Yes, we do.
You know, and a lot of times, in getting caught up in your own stuff, you kind of forget about, the good stuff that is out there sometimes. Let's face it. I mean, if you mentioned, watching the news, the media, they live by the mantra, if it bleeds, it leads. It's all about the bad stuff. Very rare will you see something good, and when you see it, you're like, oh my goodness, good news. It almost kind of makes you jerk your head back, like, what's going on? There's something wrong in the world.
That's right.
So it's kind of amazing in that respect. But yeah, you're right. In terms of, staying positive and looking for those positive things, take any situation throughout your own day. You can probably it would come down to, how am I going to look at this situation that comes up? I got a flat tire. Okay, well, it's bad. I could be all upset and angry and oh, it's going to mess me up. Or, all right, how can I get around this? I guess I got to change the tire. And then go about and maybe I'm going to see how fast I can get my tire changed, and time yourself. Maybe that's a positive way to look at it. Just little things like that, where instead of looking at the worst, and getting that feeling, you kind of switch it around and change the way you think, right?
Absolutely. You can also look at the end of the day and go, oh man, I had a rough day today. But then stop and think about your day, and think about, oh, well, wait a minute, did I really have a rough day today?
Yeah.
How many people did you impact throughout the day? How many people did you come in contact with during the day that you actually might have had a positive influence over, simply because you smiled at them?
Right.
You said good morning to them with a smile. You said thank you to them. You said I appreciate you. And what we don't realize is that if we say thank you to someone, if we say I appreciate you to someone, if we simply smile at someone, we can make a difference in their day. And as a result, though, we're making a difference in our own day too.
Right.
Because those things actually perk ourselves up, but at the same time we're perking someone else up too, because they might not be having a very good day.
Right.
For a very valid reason. But when we say thank you, I appreciate you, or I just smile at them, hey, it can put a smile on their face too.
Yeah.
And those make a big difference in people. And you think about it and you're like, huh, that wasn't such a bad day after all.
Right.
There was only one thing that actually was not the greatest, and I can't let that drive how I view my whole day.
Right.
And that actually turns the corner then. It's like, okay, that was a good day. And okay, I guess I did have a positive influence on somebody. And that helps us to keep going then. And then we're like, okay, it was a good day. Now I can look at, how did I meet my goals for the day?
Right.
Okay. And we're more likely then to say, okay, maybe I made a little progress on my goal, but I'll do better tomorrow because I had a good day today.
Right.
And I'm going to have a better day tomorrow because I'm going to remember that I had a good day today.
Yeah. Now, is that something you can also do with people when you're working with them in terms of, you know, I guess because when you're dealing with stuff like that, when you're setting goals, when you're trying to be positive, when you're trying to move forward in your life, it's about, you know, having that feedback or also that accountability. You know, where you don't really want to let, you know, I don't want to let Katherine down. She's kind of counting on. I told her this is what I want to do. She's helping me get there. I don't want to let her down too, right? It's almost like a coach in a sport.
Accountability is important. And sometimes if we are accountable to someone else, we're going to actually take it a little more seriously than being accountable to ourselves.
Right.
And when we're just accountable to ourselves, we actually can cheat. And we don't take things quite so seriously. And we won't look at it in quite the same light. But if we're accountable to someone else, such as me, then you're going to be, well, you're right. I don't want to let her down, but also I have to be honest about it.
Right.
Because we have a trust relationship, and I have to be upfront and tell her everything that went on. So she's going to then tell me and explain to me how exactly what all this means, and so I really have to take everything into account then.
Right.
Okay, and that is important. Having accountability is very important, and if you can't handle being honest with yourself and being honest with somebody else is really what it takes, then you need someone else to help hold you more accountable, at least
Right.
to start with, until you get into a good habit and a good pattern of really looking at and seeing how good positive thinking impacts you and how that then impacts you in keeping your goals going.
Right.
And being able to keep you headed towards the big goal that you have in your life and being able to maintain those goals the way that you want to.
Right. Now, how do you feel about somebody like a Tony Robbins? He's like the father of positive thinking, you know?
He's great, actually. I love to listen to him.
Yeah.
I get to hear him periodically on the radio, and I think he's great. And it's great to have people like that as role models, but we're not all going to be the big one.
Right.
You know, we're not. And it's great to be able to hear people like that and to see what they have succeeded at. What we have to do is set realistic goals for ourselves.
Right.
And that's one of the things to work on, is make sure that when you're setting goals for yourself, they have to be something that you can measure and something that's realistic.
Right.
The goals have to be measurable so that you can tell, am I making progress or not? If you can't measure them, they're not really good goals.
Right.
But if you can measure them, and you've got to make sure that there's something that you can actually achieve. If you can't achieve it, then you're not going to get there. So we have to make sure that goal setting, when we're setting goals, that they are actually realistic goals. Now, sometimes you might set a goal that other people would think is an unrealistic goal for you, but because of your own tenacity, you can actually achieve it.
Right.
Okay? But other people would look at it and go, I don't see how in the world you're ever going to get there. Well, that's not for them to decide. That's something for you to decide. And no one else has the right to tell you whether or not you can achieve it. This is something we face in our office quite a bit.
Right.
We don't have the right to tell a student, no, they cannot do something. But we do have the right to explain to them what it's going to take to get there, okay? And if they still feel that they can handle it and that they can achieve it, that's fine. That's their problem, not ours. But it is ours to help them then make sure they can break it down into steps to get there. So those other people then can say, okay, do you understand what you're going to have to do to accomplish your goal?
Right.
If they understand it, okay,
go for it. Let them go for it. Just like the person who was blind who climbed Mount Rainier. They did it.
Yeah.
He did it. I don't remember his name, but he did it. And then he went on to accomplish some other major athletic feats.
Right.
And nobody could tell him no. Now, no, I'm sure nobody thought he was going to actually achieve it, but he did, okay? He broke it down. He knew what he was going to have to do to get there. And he was able to actually accomplish it.
Right.
So you can't tell someone, no, you can't achieve this goal, but you have to help them make sure they understand what it's going to take to get there.
Yeah, to make it a realistic goal, something that
Absolutely.
is, if you work hard enough, yes, you can achieve it.
Absolutely.
Not if you're, you know, like myself, who's all of 5'9" on a good day. I'm not going to be playing center for the New York Knicks anytime soon.
Right.
Right? Is that what you're telling me, Catherine? Not going to happen?
Right. I think
Okay.
you might have some trouble with that one.
Yeah, because, you know, you can't teach tall.
That's true. That is rather hard to teach.
Exactly, but again, it's about setting those realistic goals, and also, like you said, you know, having those incremental ones that are leading you down the path of getting to the bigger goal that you have down the road.
You have to know, are you going to have to be physically fit to achieve it?
Right.
Is it something you're going to have to study for to achieve it? What are you going to have to do to get there? You know, are you going to have to learn a new skill to get there? You know, what is it going to take to get to where you want to go? And if it's going to have to take something new to get there, okay, fine. Where are you going to go to get it?
Right.
Okay? Is it going to take some financing to get there? Okay, then where's the money going to come from? You know, we have to know, what are we going to do? Let's explore your resources. How can we get some funds?
Right.
What kind of funding is out there? Let's do some exploring. Let's get on the internet and look. You never know what you can find.
Right.
There's money out there, you just have to find it.
Yeah. And now, what about when you're dealing with, and you said you dealt with this with your own husband, you know, somebody who's not the I can do anything kind of guy, is more the glass half empty kind of person. And I'm sure you probably have run across that a lot throughout your career at Wright State as well. People that are just, they're intimidated, or they just don't feel good about it. They're pessimistic, they're negative.
The glass half empty kind of person is extremely hard to work with. I've worked with many of them, aside from just my husband. And it's really hard because you can't just turn them into somebody who's a positive thinker.
Right.
They can be very good goal setters, and they might reach some of their goals, but reaching all of them and feeling good about them is not necessarily something that's going to happen. They tend to be a person that even when they reach their goals, they're not happy with them.
Right.
That's the problem that you run into with them, is they're never satisfied. They don't feel good about what they've accomplished, and they don't feel like they've accomplished anything. That's what I ran into with him, and I've run into that with other people too. They might accomplish their goals, but they're not satisfied. And it isn't that they feel like they need to do more. They just don't feel like they did anything that was that great, or that good. They're just not, and they don't feel like they necessarily need to go on to do anything else. They end up getting more depressed. They have a lot of problems, at least he did. He had a lot of problems with depression. And also got into a blaming game as to why he wasn't successful. It was never his fault.
Right.
Which I have seen with other people. And that's not necessarily to say that all people who see the glasses as half empty blame others when they're not successful. It's just that they tend to not be very happy with what they do. They tend to always be looking for something else, or always looking for another avenue, or just sitting back and not doing much of anything.
Right.
So they're very hard to turn around. I'm not convinced that it can't be done. I think sometimes it takes a miracle to get them that way, and miracles do happen. I'm not one to say that they don't, but they are not easy ones to work with.
Right.
It really takes someone who has more of a tendency to see the glass at least partially, you know, nudging towards the half full part,
Right.
Than the half empty part, to really be able to work with them. They're not easy. They're really not.
Right.
Because there's usually a lot more going on with them than just they're a glass half empty kind of person. I think that in which there was a lot more going on with him, and usually is with other people too. There's more to it than just they're a negative person. Like with him, there was depression going on. There's a lot more behind them as to why they're such a negative person in the first place.
Now, do you think with certain types of people, I'm not sure if this pertained to your husband at all, was it that maybe what they were going after really wasn't something of a passion for them? They just felt like it was more of, well, this is what I should be doing.
I think that's part of it, is that they have a hard time finding their passion. Because when he did find his passion, he was quite happy.
Right.
He didn't get to keep it for real long due to his own health. But if you can help them find something that they're passionate about, I think that is a key to it, is they really struggle with finding something that they can be passionate about.
Right.
And something that they really, really can sink their teeth into. And not just enjoy, but actually make a difference in and feel like they're making a difference in this world in.
Right.
Because they're so set that they're never going to.
Right.
But if you can actually break through that wall with them and find what they can actually make a difference in, then you've got it. Okay, but that takes a lot of work to get to.
Right. Do you think that comes from, say, our upbringing? You know, parents' influence and such is like, well, you have to do this, and you know, we're brought up, you know, saying, okay, you have to go to school, you have to go. A lot of have-tos in there, and you know, when you talk about passions aren't things that are forced on you. Passions are something you want.
I think a combination of that and maybe things that happen in their lives where they've not felt worthy. Or they've not felt like they could do things. So they've felt beat down, and then they felt like there are other things that they've had to do. So it's been between the two, the combination, it's very hard for them to feel like they have the ability to be passionate about something.
Right. Yeah, a lot of times, and I think we've all probably gone through stages in our life, you know, whether it be a career or relationships, because you know, that's a big one too, relationships.
I know. I know.
You know, because a lot of people have goals for that. I remember growing up, you know, I'm going to be, I decided I was going to be married by 27, believe it or not. That was the goal. I got engaged at 25, and I should have been married at 27. I said, you know what? This is, I don't know what I'm doing with this person. She's a psychopath.
Oh,
you know?
my.
And so, of course, that ended, but that changed everything. It's like, well, now what? And for a while there, I was kind of in that, I don't know what I should be doing at this point. And a lot of that, I think, stems from, again, you know, you see your friends and you see your influences, and well, everybody else is doing it this way, then I guess I'm supposed to as well.
Definitely. Absolutely. We see those things happen, and then we also see our goals then go by the wayside.
Yes, and that's a big, it's like, oh, I thought I was, you know, by 30 I would be this, but I'm not.
And then our positive thinking kind of goes down too,
Yes.
and we kind of end up down in the dumps. And then we go through a period of life where we're kind of like, oh, what am I going to do? And then we're like, okay, I got to pick myself back up. I've got to get more positive about things. But then what am I going to do with myself?
Right.
And we look at, okay, my original goal was this. Can I still do that? Or do I need to change gears? And we go through that part of life where we're, okay, searching, what else can I do? Or do I need to go back to my original goal?
Right.
Sometimes we go back to the original goal and realize that, oh, gee, I wouldn't have been successful if I'd done it in my original time frame because I was too immature or finances weren't right for whatever reason. But now I'm ready for it.
Right.
And it works, okay? Or we find out, you know what? That really wasn't the best goal for me in the first place. This is the direction I need to take.
Right.
And I was dead set I was going to be a nurse. That's what I was going to do. Then I met my husband, and all that went out the window. And what I didn't know was that I was going to be a nurse anyway to my son.
Right.
And I developed those skills, and I had absolutely no idea I was going to end up working with people with disabilities. That was just
never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would end up working with people with disabilities at all, and especially in a university.
Right.
Not in my wildest dreams. I wanted to be a mom. That's what I really wanted to be.
Right.
That's not it. I ended up in a university, and I've been there almost 24 years now. So, you know, we end up changing. And you know, that positive part of us, in that persistence part of us, along with setting goals, all goes together. You know, we have to realize change happens.
Right.
Change happens in our lives, and we have to stay positive about everything as things change, and not let us get it beat down to the point where we can't move forward. And by doing that and being persistent in our lives and being willing to set goals and even change our goals sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest part of it. Learning to adapt when things aren't going your way,
We
right?
have to. And, you know, just because you set a goal doesn't mean you can't change it. And that's one of the things that we have to remember.
Right.
Goals are not set in stone. We can change them. We can change directions. We have that choice. Just because we set a goal does not mean that it's set in stone and that it's unchangeable.
Right.
We can always change them because life changes.
Yeah,
Life
and also,
changes all the time.
And like we were talking about with Edison at the beginning, he kept his goal of trying to create that light
Yeah.
bulb. But just because the first way that he decided he was going to try didn't work, he didn't just throw in the towel and be like, that's it, it's never going to work. He just kept looking for different ways. So you can find different ways to achieve those goals. I mean,
You can.
You know, plenty of times where I look back and people are like, you know, would you have changed anything? And everybody would be like, yes, I would change. And I kind of stop myself and be like, no, I would like to say yes, but I know I can't, because then I wouldn't have experienced this, and I wouldn't have gotten that, and I wouldn't have met that person, and this wouldn't have happened. So yeah, maybe life isn't exactly what I thought, you know, when I charted it out and made that plan of being married by this age and this and that. But overall, the goal of being happy is being achieved. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think people can look at it from that point of view as well, and really take from it, like, yeah, my light bulb over here, maybe I didn't, you know, I screwed up 1,000 times, but I'm still getting my light bulb.
We all make mistakes, okay? We all do.
I know, I told you I did. I admit it.
Nobody is perfect in life. Nobody is. We all make mistakes. We all have to learn from those mistakes. That's part of growing. That's part of getting where we want to go, no matter whether we change directions once or we change directions 20 times,
Right.
okay? We all make mistakes, but we have to, in the course of life, where change is something that is going to happen to us many, many times.
It's inevitable, like
It is
taxes and death, like you
That's
said.
right. It is inevitable. Change is going to happen to all of us. What we have to do is try to maintain our ability to think positively as much as we can, and be persistent in getting through life.
Right.
Okay? And you're right, you know, with all of the difficulties that happened in my life, okay, with everything that has gone on, with my son, my husband, myself, and things that have gone on with my work, I wouldn't change any of it at all.
Right.
I would not change my son and his disability for anything. I would not change him one little bit, because if I did, I would not have the career I've had at Wright State for the last 24 years. I would have
Right.
never gone into it. I would have never met the people that I have. I would not have had the opportunities that I've had. And I would not be sitting here now if I
Yeah.
had not had the life that I've had. Was it hard? Absolutely. Have I learned a lot? Boy, have I ever. I have learned quite a bit, and
Right.
it's really made me who I am, along with the Lord's help in getting there. It has. He's been diligent. He's never left me through any of it. But he's helped me to get through it, and he's helped me to stay positive through it,
Right.
even when things were really, really hard. And he's helped me and my husband to make some goals when we needed to, when we absolutely had
Right.
to get through all of it. But I've managed to stay positive as much as I could.
Yeah.
And you know, this is what we have to do if we're going to be successful through life and have any kind of peace with life at all.
Yeah, and I think the thing that you've kind of tied all together here, believe it or not, whether you meant to do this or not, Katherine, is the resiliency factor.
That's right.
You see what I did there?
Absolutely. Yes.
We're talking about the Resiliency Counselor. That is our guest, Katherine Myers. Go to her website, find out more about her, how she can help you, of course. The website, resiliencycounselor.com. That's resiliencycounselor.com, or you can pick up the phone and call her. Yeah, she actually answers the phone. 937-405-5795. And in terms of, again, with our topic today of goal setting and positive thinking, when you are going to be working with people, especially because, your background, and you've seen a lot, you've done a lot, you've got a lot to offer now in terms of tools and such with people. Is that going to be part of the structure of, okay, somebody calls you and says, I need some help here, and what can we do to get me there, kind of thing?
We'll start out with a consult to make sure that it's appropriate.
And it's a free consultation,
It's a
right?
free consultation, and we'll go from there. And if they're in the Dayton area, we can set up something face-to-face. If not, we can stick with over the phone or by Skype. And if you want somebody to talk to a group of people, I'm mobile. I can actually come to you.
Right.
So, yeah.
And again, technology makes it possible because, again, if somebody's not in the Dayton area,
That's right.
and all of a sudden they get that half-empty thing. Oh, I can't reach out to her because she can't help me. I'm all the way out in
no.
Boise, Idaho. Well, guess
No.
what? It doesn't matter.
There's the phone and there's Skype.
Yep.
There's ways to do things. And that's the nice thing about living when we do, because technology is great.
Right.
We can make it work to our advantage.
Yeah, and you've had a lot of experience with that technology stuff.
Yes, I'm the department
From what I
techie where I work.
understand.
And I use technology all the time and make it work for me.
Right.
So we can figure things out. That's not a problem.
Yeah, and I'm sure through that time, some of the students that have come through have probably been like, technology, oh my, how do I work all this stuff?
Very definitely. I've had to introduce a lot of students to technology for the very first time. Some of them have never used much in the way of technology because they've been afraid of it.
Right.
And afraid that they wouldn't be successful with it. So it's been something that I've introduced people to, and something I've had to help troubleshoot. It's something that I deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that being afraid of failure, of not being able to succeed at something, that holds a lot of people back from actually achieving their goals. Yeah, they want to do this, but they don't see a way because, well, I got bills to pay, and I got to go to work, and I got to do this, and there's all those have-tos getting in the way.
Fear of failure is huge. That's one of the biggest stumbling blocks we have, is people being afraid that they're going to fail.
Right.
And how many failures did Edison have?
About 1,000.
Before he succeeded?
Yeah.
We all fail at something at some time. And it doesn't take but, admitting that, hey, I'm afraid, and then we can move forward from there and talk about where your strengths are. And that's what we have to focus on, is where a person's strengths are, instead of looking at the weaknesses. And we draw on the strengths and see where we can go from there.
Yeah.
And that's where we start.
Yeah, because even a Hall of Famer misses 70% of the pitches he's going to be facing.
That's true.
In
That
baseball.
is very true. We don't realize how much we miss on our road to success.
Right.
That there's so many failures on the way there. And people don't really understand that. They think that they've got to get it the first time.
Right.
And that they've got to have a hit immediately. No, it's really hard to get there, and there are a lot of failures on the way. And you don't have to be right immediately. There's a rough road to get there,
Yeah.
and you've actually, in trying to head anywhere, there is a lot of bumps in getting there. It's not smooth whatsoever.
Nope.
And you just got to be prepared for the fact that that's the way it's going to be, and that's the way it is for anybody.
Yeah.
No one is a success overnight.
Right. Yeah, and if you need somebody to help you prepare as well, Katherine can be that person for you. Reach out to her. She's the Resiliency Counselor. The website, resiliencycounselor.com, or give her a call directly, 937-405-5795. And as always, Katherine, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, you're very welcome.